Welcome to our podcast on gender and climate justice, where we explore the intersectionality of gender justice, climate justice, the importance of diversity, inclusion, and inclusivity. I am your host, Wanjiru Kinyua, and today we are diving into the heart of the matter, exploring how climate justice intersects with gender and feminism. And I'm joined with two remarkable guests. On my right side, we have Suheila Abdul, who is a Lamu advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a member of the Lamu Women's Alliance. And on my left, I am joined by Cindy Kobe, who says she's a mother, she's a sister, she's a daughter, and an Indigenous woman championing for climate justice. Yeah, that's right?
Yeah, thank you.
So starting from Suheila, tell us more about you, apart from being an advocate of the High Court of Kenya.
Thank you. I think, like you said, my name is Suheila Abdul Faraj. I think for me, the most remarkable thing about me is I'm from Lamu. I'm very proud to be from Lamu. I always say that I'm just a girl from Lamu. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and also one of the board of directors, Lamu Women Alliance. One other fact I will add is I am very carefree. I like to do my things. I live on the edge. I don't like rules. I don't like seriousness. I don't like formality,
We can see that
protocols. I
clearly.
like to be myself, be free, and do what makes you happy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Indigenous woman,
Yes.
talk to us about yourself.
Well, where do I start? My name is Cindy Kobe. I'm an Indigenous woman before I became anything else. I'm an Indigenous woman from the Oge community of the Mau Forest in Kenya, and we are a hunter-gatherer community. And we are currently dwelling in Mau Forest. We use that Mau Forest was our ancestral home. And after that, I am a programs officer at Community Advocacy and Awareness Trust, which is an organization championing for the inclusion of women and marginalized groups. And we impact lives and transform communities. And we are working with the Lamu Women Alliance in ensuring that we have more women in the climate processes, more inclusivity, and that climate justice is mainstreamed across. Gender and climate justice is mainstreamed across.
Okay. When you
Yeah.
talk about an indigenous woman, what comes into my mind is hunting, gathering, using herbs, using traditional medicines.
Well, that is correct.
You still do that?
Yeah, we still do that. We still
Okay.
hunt, we still gather. Of course, because we no longer have an ancestral home. We no longer do the hunting and the gathering, but we still have traditional herbs. All those things that you've mentioned, we still do them to date, and we are trying to ensure that it is not lost, and we are transferring this knowledge to our children's children, and the younger generation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And let me still stick to you. Talk to us about how climate change and how climate justice especially affects women and girls. How does this impact the girls and the women's lives, especially here in Kenya?
Yeah, here in Kenya, I'll just give an example of the recent floods. Like, there has been a lot of floods as a result of the long-term shift of temperature of the weather patterns. That's why we now have floods in December. It's December now,
Yeah.
or in November to December. We used to get short rains between. Now we used to get short rains, but now it's longer rains. We now have flooding, we have drought, we have the melting of the ice caps. We have all this, which is in turn leading to food insecurity. We have a lot of this hidden hunger within our communities, and how it is affecting women and girls is women are the households are the foundations of a home. Women, they're the ones who take care of their family, they take care of the children, they ensure that the kids are going to school, that they are well fed. And when there's no, I'll just give an example. If when there's no food, a woman is the one who will sacrifice and ensure that the kids are eating, and a woman is the one who will decide not to not to prioritize her needs, but prioritizes the needs of the family, making her more vulnerable.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. And shifting to our advocate right here, do we still have leaders, especially women leaders, who still advocate for climate justice?
Yes, I think we do because number one, like we said, we have people who are passionate about this. We have people who have firsthand, information on it, firsthand experience with regards to, the effects of climate change, the mitigation. So there are people who are on the active aspect of championing for climate change and gender inclusivity. And that is why we are saying, for those who are not yet on the movement, we are trying to explain to them, or rather get them to that level where they get to see how the two interrelate and why it is an issue that needs to be sorted.
Do you really think like we will ever have somebody who is so passionate about climate like we did have Wangari Maathai, for instance?
Yes, I think it's really a question on circumstances. It's really a question on resources, and it's really a question of knowledge. Because you see, someone like Professor Wangari Maathai, she knew it, she understood it, she lived it as her,
Yeah.
experience, as her life. So you need to be on that level first before you get the passion. You need to understand why. There's no way you're fighting a fight just because you think you're passionate about it. You need to first understand, why am I fighting this? How is it affecting me? Or rather, what difference will it make if I fight this fight? How many lives am I changing by fighting this fight? The moment you get your answers to the whys, then it becomes really easy to even get the how. You see, like Professor, she experienced, or rather she encountered a lot of difficulties in her journey. There are a lot of resistance. People at first
Sure.
didn't understand where she was coming from, where she was going. And people would say it was all, a show. Others would say it was for attention. But then with time, we really got to understood why she was doing what she was doing, because herself, she understood, and she was so passionate about what she wanted to do, or rather what she wanted to achieve for her community.
Okay.
Yes.
And something that you have mentioned, and something that is coming to my mind is there's a time Wangari Maathai, the late Wangari Maathai professor, adopted, is it Karura Forest, and made it like more of her own responsibility. And even at the point of her death, that is where her ashes were distributed, right? Recently, just after resuming a government, our First Lady adopted a forest. Do you think that there is that understanding of the passion of climate or the impact of adopting a forest in the first place?
Yes. I think, like I said, before you do something, you have to understand why. So if someone adopts a forest, I am sure they know what they're doing, and it's just one of the many ways you can, use to be able to lead through your passion and your need of seeing that change in the community or in your people.
Okay.
Yeah. And you also need to ask yourself why you're adopting a forest. You can't just be doing things for the sake of doing things. You don't want to be just like Wangari Maathai. You need to ask yourself, why am I adopting a forest for what? What is the purpose? So if, whoever is adopting a forest needs to first check who are the communities living in this forest. Are you are you adopting for the purpose of evicting a community?
Yeah.
Or are you just adopting to ensure that it is well taken care of? Or you are nurturing a forest? Or is it your personal property? There's so many things, there's so many things to ask yourselves before you think about adopting a forest. Well, we are watching the adoption of forests, and we are hoping that it is not for their own personal gain,
benefits.
personal benefits.
All
Yes.
right. Every action has a reaction. That's what they say, right?
Exactly.
So let's talk about the indigenous communities, the indigenous people. Bearing in mind that, Cindy, you are from an indigenous community, what does this, how does this affect the climate resilience?
Indigenous people are the caretakers of biodiversity of all flora and fauna. Like the name Ogek means caretaker of all flora and fauna. And this means that we have been living in harmony with nature. We have been protecting our natural reserves. If it is our forests, like Mau Forest. Mau Forest has been, it has been okay. Like there has been no deforestation. I'm talking about 10 years back.
Yeah.
10 to 20 years back, way before I was born, in the 90s or the 80s. Like the deforestation rates were not so high, but now that the community has been evicted from the Mau forest, the deforestation rates have gone a notch higher, and we have lost so many of our biodiversity because of encroachment of other communities. We have also had other people from the private sector also investing in this sector, and this has led to the loss of our forest and our ancestral home, and it has led, of course, forests are the carbon sinks of the planet.
Okay.
And when there is a lot of pollution or a lot of carbon in the air, and there isn't much forest to sequestrate this carbon, it leads now to climate change. And now that there are no trees to absorb the carbon from the atmosphere, now it now impacts us, like the floods we are seeing, the droughts that we are seeing, and all this, and the injustices, the human rights violation. We've also seen the food crisis. So when you not hand over a natural resource, not really hand over, but leave it to the indigenous people to continue conserving the forest or conserving the biodiversity that uses, nature protects nature. So if you fight nature, nature will fight again and fight us.
Oh.
Yeah. So, for example, the floods, nature is fighting back because it's taking back what we took from it.
Oh.
It's a whole
Interesting.
it's a whole circle. So when what success looks like for indigenous people when it comes to conserving biodiversity is maybe when you hand over, when you let them do what they have been doing, which is conserving the forest and responding to the impacts of climate change.
Okay. All right. Now, let's talk about intersectionality. Suheila, what exactly is intersectionality and how does it intertwine with climate justice?
So intersectionality as a word, as an English word, when you dissect the word into two, there's inter and there's sectionality, which means we have different sections, but something is joining them together. Or there's a larger part, and then there are different sections within that larger part. So intersectionality aspect of climate change, or having intersectionality as a way to achieve climate justice really means that climate change affects all of us differently. Because if I may give you an allegory, maybe you have, let's say, there's a woman who is like 60 years old, poor, disabled. There's a man who is like 30, working. There's a child who's like 6, orphaned. These three people will not be affected the same way by climate change. So intersectionality looks at that. What is that unique factor in every sector in the community that probes us to look at it differently, in terms of, if we are really to get the climate justice, then we need to have that intersectionality in the mitigation and in the way of coping the climate change. Because when you look at intersectionality, it says those aspects are different. We have the gender aspect. A man and a woman, they're not affected the same.
Sure.
We have the aspect of economic independence, If you have money and if you don't have money, those are two separate differences, We have ethnicity, we have location. So a woman from Lamu will not be affected the same way as a woman from Nairobi, because, truth be told, a woman from Nairobi is privileged. We're looking at the majority. When you look at a woman from Lamu, there are so many factors that are setting us behind, in the sense that if the same floods were to affect us the same day, both of us will need different interventions to get out of that floods. Because there's one woman who is, maybe when we're looking at the aspect of gender, there's that woman who is educated and out of school, and their only problem is they cannot get employment because of their gender. But there's another woman in Lamu who was not given a chance to even go to school in the first place. So your fight is not my fight.
Sure.
Maybe you're fighting because you're saying, include us, give us equal pay. For me, I'm fighting, I'm saying, let me go to school. Before we come to the payment, let me go to school so that I can be able to, stand on my own 2 feet. So intersectionality is really important because, like I said, we cannot achieve climate justice unless we are able to see how differently different people are affected by climate change. And by seeing it differently from that different perspective, then it will be easy to customize the kind of help, the kind of mitigation, the kind of interventions to these specific people, to these different people, in order for them to get to the final destination, which is climate justice. Otherwise, we'll be talking of mitigation and interventions that are leveled to an extent that it will reach a point where we'll get to the final destination, but not all of us will have attained that climate justice. Because if this person lost their house because of floods, they don't have food, they don't have shelter, and this other person, the only problem is that they cannot get to work because of the floods. Of course, it's different. For person A, maybe you find an alternative route for them. But for person B, you need to give them shelter, you need to give them blankets, you need to give them food, you need to give them healthcare. So looking at it from an intersectional point of view is exactly why we're saying, especially with the gender aspect, that women are affected differently. Persons living with disability are affected differently. And the earlier we realize that, the better it will be for us to attain that climate justice that we want to attain.
Yeah, and also, as she said, I just want to add, before implementing any project, you first need to do a vulnerability assessment.
True.
You need to check who is vulnerable. Maybe in another area, a man is more vulnerable. Maybe in another area, a woman is more vulnerable, or a young person is more vulnerable. So all these projects, all these climate projects, they need first to do a vulnerability assessment. I'll give an example of, I had a story that it was in the coastal area. They went to a company went and established toilets. They were not established, they went and built toilets for them. But the people did not use the toilets because it is not a priority. So you first need to go and do a vulnerability assessment to check the priorities of the community. What are the main problems? Prioritize the issues, then respond to these prioritized issues accordingly. Yeah.
Do you really think that we will ever reach a point, especially right here in Kenya, because every day we hear about the injustices, especially that are being done to the less fortunate, to the most vulnerable of all people. We have very bad roads that are being built day in, day out. Yeah. The other day on Twitter I saw this hashtag some biscuit roads, yeah, whereby the roads have been constructed, and with the result of the current floods, everything is collapsing. Even the superhighway has cracks. Yeah. My point is, will it ever reach a point whereby we reach an equal point whereby the rich and the poor are being treated the same, or maybe trying to be treated the same?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think there's a time that we'll ever reach that place. We still have a long way to go. Recently, the UN says that before we reach gender equality, it will take 1,000 years, not 100, either 100 or 1,000. And those are so many years, we won't be here anymore.
Yeah, true.
So we still have a long way to go, and there's still more work that needs to be done. And where the rich and the poor are the same, I don't know. I don't.
I think to weigh in on your question, for me, I would say it is possible, but then we're not looking at, equality. Do you know this picture? It's an allegory that tries to distinguish between equity, equality, and true equality. Let me paint that picture for you. So in that picture, they're saying we have, do you know that where in equality, we have a tall man and a child and another one who is not so tall, not so short. They're trying to look over a fence. And they're saying that's equality. We are all standing behind the fence. we're all looking where we are looking. But of course, the shorter ones are not able to see.
True.
And then we have a second picture that talks about equity, where we have the man standing on his feet. The second person in terms of height has one box, standing on one box,
Yeah.
and the smaller one is standing on two boxes. And they're saying this is equity. But now there's a third picture that speaks on true equality, where the fence doesn't exist in the first place. So no one needs to be standing on boxes. No one needs to be lifting another one. Like the fence does not exist. So you come the way you come, but we are all seeing the view.
All
Our
right.
point is, we
All
don't.
right.
I feel like at this time and in this era, we don't even need equity. We need true equality. Eradicate the fence. Let there be no fence. We are all seeing, whether you're on a wheelchair, whether you're standing, whether you're sleeping, you can still see it. We don't. We want to, go from that fact of where we are saying, I need two boxes, you need one box, you need three boxes. Let's not need the boxes in the first place. Eradicate that fence. Do away with the fence so that whoever is standing wherever they are
Can have a clear
yeah,
view.
so if you're poor, you're rich, you're a woman, you're a man, provided there are those basic structures, like you said, that are in place, that are so, well developed. Like if let's say if it's a government hospital and I get sick, I can be able to get the medication that the rich person can get in a private hospital, then I wouldn't need you to rationalize
two
us. I
boxes
wouldn't
to
need
step
you
on.
to make the poor get to the level of the rich, or make the rich come to the level of the poor.
Yeah.
Let each one of us stand on their own feet with their own unique challenges, unique perspectives, but be able to get, or rather to partake in the final interest or the final gain, which is climate justice.
Okay. Let's talk about financing, because I feel the biggest challenge when it comes especially to climate justice is finances. Why do you think it is very important for women and girls to access these funds that are being given for climate justice?
Well, to implement any projects, you need money. And as you can see, like the climate financing mechanism here in Kenya, like most of these climate finances are given in the forms of debts. I'll just give like the Flocker program. People think that the Flocker program is financing locally led climate action, and people think that it is a grant, but it is not. A portion of it is a loan, and that's the problem. Why are we giving loans to respond to the effects of climate change? It should not be a loan; it should be a grant. And like
Maybe you can clarify what's the difference between a grant and a loan?
a grant, you don't have to pay back. A loan, you have to pay back.
Okay.
So, like the money that that all these institutions are giving Kenya is to respond to the impacts of climate change and pay them back. So it doesn't make sense. Why would you? And these are problems that were caused by the developing countries, and the developing countries are giving us money to respond to the impacts of climate change, a problem that was caused by them. And we have to pay them again. So, and there's really no justice there. And even the little money that we get, a very small percentage goes to women. Mostly goes to the government institutions. Like they have not prioritized gender and marginalized groups. Like allocating funds to more. So what we need is more allocation, like an equal allocation of money to gender just focused projects, like projects that are going directly to communities, going directly to the most vulnerable members of the community. So, that's what we need, because when money does not reach the community, it will not respond to the impacts of climate change. Yeah.
And one thing that is coming to my mind is when there are funds involved, when these funds, especially that has been released to the women, unfortunately, most of them do not get these funds. As an advocate of the High Court of Kenya in Lamu, though, how do you maintain? How do you ensure that maybe women? Do you have any mechanisms that have been put in place that make women access these funds directly without using different channels?
Of late, I will say no, because like you said, you see, first let me cycle back to your first the discussion that you're having. When we say that women are the most vulnerable, women are the most affected by climate change, how do you expect the same person who has nothing left, who had nothing from the beginning,
True.
and the little that she had was taken away by climate change, how do you expect them to pay you back whatever you're giving them? Like, how do you expect to give such a person loans? Why? For what reason? So the reason as to why we are pushing for, climate, or rather gender sensitive climate finance policies, is we need to be cognizant of the fact that these women are people who, because of the historical injustice, historical marginalization, they are at a point where they're not able to mitigate the effects of climate change. Because, like I said, maybe if you look at it from the 21st century, we can say that there's been a tremendous change. We appreciate that, but fact still remains. My mother, my grandmother, your mother, your grandmother, they still are in that web that they were before, in those 19s, 1800s. So if this woman, because of the historical injustices, she was not able to financially be independent, meaning even in the 21st century, the effects will be trickling down. So the same woman who is in the 21st century, who was there in the 1800s, they are facing the same problems. So having such a woman be able to access the funds directly, it will take time, of course.
Sure.
Because number one, there's no priority, which is why we are having this discussion in the first place. There's no priority. There's no inclusion of gender in these policies. Because for them to appreciate the struggles of women, they have to first understand that where we are not on the same level as the other groups. Like, if, for example, we're looking at the gender aspect, the women are not on the same level as the men. So they have to put up extra mechanisms or extra strategies to ensure that those who have been left behind, constantly left behind because of the different circumstances, social norms, economic norms, cultural norms, they're able to pick up the pace. So I would say there are no such strategies, which is actually the problem, because now you're saying you've brought these funds and you're saying let the women access them, but like we said, most women are not educated.
True.
Because of different factors, cultural factors, religious factors. So how do you expect, for example, if you come to Lamu and you give us funding and you tell us we need to fill forms, you're not targeting me as a woman from Lamu. That is targeting the people, the elites.
True.
You see, so we need to have strategies that when we say these are gender sensitive, we can see it. Not you just doing something just for the sake of doing it. We have to take into account this peculiar aspects, peculiar circumstances that surround vulnerable women, marginalized, not the women who maybe are in towns, not the women who are privileged, marginalized women who have for long been left behind. What do we do? What is that extra step that we can go for them to ensure that we at least pull them to this power where everyone else is? So the strategies are still yet to be put up. The efforts are yet to be seen, because like we said, we need to do a lot of work to try and bridge that gap that has been left for years, that gap that has only grown bigger and bigger because of the various aspects that surround a marginalized woman, a woman from the ground.
And you brought up something that is very interesting, education. And I will throw this question to the both of you. Which are some of the ways that you think education can especially reach the woman and the girl, especially that conversations or education that dwell into climate justice?
Well, first we need to simplify the language. Like climate change is full of a lot of jargons. So you first need to simplify the language.
Okay, what is climate justice?
You first need to simplify the language. You simplify the language, and if the people in Lamu, for example, you need to go and talk to them in Kiswahili. Don't go and present to them in English and you expect them to understand. And you also want to call it a gender
Education.
sensitive education, and you're training them in English. That's just ticking boxes. So you first need to go and simplify the language, and also develop materials that relate to them, that resonate to them. If you're going to Lamu, you don't go and talk to them about forests. Are there forests in Lamu though?
Yeah, we have the
The
Boni
the
forest,
mangrove,
the
the
famous Boni forest. We have the mangrove forest in the ocean.
yeah. You can't talk to them about the tropical forest like the ones in Mau Forest. You
Sure.
talk to them about the Boni forest and the
Mangrove.
mangrove forest, and also the seas, about the ocean, about that the water is now more like it's coming closer to the mainland, So
Is it?
yes, is it? She's from Lamu.
Is the water
She's
coming closer to the
Yes,
land?
yes, because of with climate change, the ocean is it's interconnected. It's mysterious in the sense that when we have these deep waves from the middle of the ocean, they are slowed down by the mangroves. So the more mangroves we cut, the lesser the slowing down. So the waves, when they come in their full effect, which pushes the water to overflow from the brink. They overflow to the people, to the community. Yeah.
Okay.
So these things are interconnected. You might find the sea is overflowing and you're like, maybe this is a different thing, and maybe we start thinking that maybe it's like a curse from God. Still climate change. And also, to add on to what Cindy is saying, I think it is really important to localize what we are saying, because like she said on the aspect of the Ogiek community, how on earth do you go to a group of people that have been living in a place,
In the forest.
conserving it, taking care of it, and suddenly you're educated enough to tell them, leave the forest, let us take care of it for you.
yeah.
It doesn't make sense. The same way with the people from Lamu. For example, my people they can dive in deep waters. My people can survive underwater for so long. They can hold their breath. But you see, you might find someone coming, oh, there's a scuba diver, there's this professional diver from, I don't know, Nairobi, who comes to Lamu. No scuba diver can be able to outdive that young boy who has been in the ocean ever since he was 5. By the time he is 20, there's no professional who can outdo him. So what I'm trying to say is the same with the women. There's a way that we've been living. There's a way that we have been, dealing with climate change. There's a way that we've been conserving our mangroves. There's a way that we've been fishing as people from Lamu. So what the best you can do is localize that knowledge that you think is different and bring it to us. Because when you come to Lamu and you have a group of women and you're like, climate change, the effects of climate, no one will understand you. But if you ask those women, what has changed in fishing? What do you think is different from your husband's experience? And I will tell you, these days, if my husband used to bring home 3 kilograms of fish, these days he can only bring a half. And you're like, what do you think is the change? And they'll be like, something is wrong with the ocean. There's a lot of plastic. People are cutting mangroves. So you see, this woman already knows what is wrong. This woman, in her own language, in her own experience, she already knows what climate change is. So you don't come here from Nairobi with your English and you think you're educating her. You're not educating her. She is educated in her own language. If anything, she knows more about the ocean than you, who is a certified researcher, who is a certified, I don't know, what analyst. So you see, what I'm trying to say is, when we go to the community, to the local community, to the marginalized people, we need to put in mind, or rather have in mind, the fact that these are people who have been doing it. They've been doing it their own way. Just that we are now trying to, westernize this by having it in English and having all these carbon credits, but they already know what it means in their own language. So the best way we can help them is, whenever we're giving them information or anything different, we have to do it in their language. We have to do it in their ways, because that's the best way they can relate. They already know. What you're doing is just maybe giving them a push.
Ticking
Like maybe
boxes.
maybe like
Yeah,
like we said,
exactly.
maybe they know what climate change is. What they need is the finance to ensure that they're able to mitigate. So you don't go there and tell them, plant trees. No. Like Cindy said,
Ask them.
there has to be a customized way for them. Because, for example, when you come to Lamu and our biggest problem is mangroves, there's no way you can tell us to plant beans. We need finances to be able to buy the mangrove seedlings and plant mangroves, because that's what is affecting us. If you come to Lamu and our problem is fishing, maybe you can give us alternative sources of livelihood. So the more we localize the financing, the mitigation mechanisms, the better it is. Otherwise, we'll be fighting a losing battle where people who are in their offices, comfortable chairs, think they know more
Than the people who
than the
have been
people
there.
on the ground. While
All
in
right.
real sense, we'll all be engaging in false solutions, wasting, pumping a lot of resources and not getting any outcomes, or rather not making any difference in the community that we are supposed to actually make a difference in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel this is a conversation that we actually need to have in another episode. But before we wrap up, because I see time is really rushing, we cannot, of course, outlook the issue about health when it comes to climate justice and climate change and how it affects different genders, right? So how does climate change especially affect women and girls? Briefly,
In the health sector.
in the health sector.
Well, in the health sector, sexual reproductive health and rights is also is key in this, because as a result of climate change, you've seen that cases of GBV has gone higher, because people they're struggling now. Families are now struggling for resources. We've also seen rape. Rape is also going high because women and girls, they have to travel long distances to access water. They have to go even to a near hospital, and we do not have hospitals near communities. The hospitals are very far, and healthcare has deteriorated because there's no money. If there's no money, you cannot afford nice healthcare. You cannot afford to go to hospital, and you'll also there'll also be a lot of maternal mortality. Children will die. Child mortality. Children, small children will be dying once they're given birth, because families will be forced to give birth at home than go to hospital, because hospitals are now expensive. They're even far, and they do not have they cannot afford healthcare. And also mental health is also key, because as the gay community, we are currently doing a study on checking the mental health of the community as a result of the evictions, and also relating it to climate change, because the evictions affects the mental health of the people.
True. I mean, you cannot just remove somebody from home.
Yeah, you've been living there for years, then you come and kick me out. I don't even have another place to go. Then you're telling me to go to Ushago, and this is the only Ushago I
That's
know.
the little shago,
So you'll get there's a lot of trauma involved.
Sure.
There's a lot of separation anxiety, and we want to ensure that we want to confirm that climate change does affect the mental health of people and communities, not only in regards to evictions, but the environment has changed. Like we no longer have green spaces. Green spaces are very calming, and we don't have them anymore, and it is affecting the mental health of people. So we also need to remember that not only physical health, sexual health, but also our mental health. Climate change does affect our mental health.
All right.
Yeah.
Also, if I may weigh in, you see, let alone the fact that we as women are affected, health-wise in terms of climate change, there's the indirect effect that comes to women. Because since time immemorial, women have been the providers of unpaid care work. When someone falls sick at home, it is the woman who will be the designated nurse.
Yes.
When someone is sick, it is the woman. Since she is the designated nurse, she is likely to be the easiest to be affected or infected by that specific kind of disease. So the fact that women alone, the fact that they are the primary caregivers at home, really is a burden to them. Because number one, as she has enlisted, them having to walk long distances, them having to get the water and so on and so forth, them just having to stay home to care for the sick, that is a burden on them. That is an effect that is so big on them, and that is impossible to even, manage. So we say that women are affected health-wise in the sense that directly as victims and indirectly as primary caregivers. And we always tend to overlook this role that women play, but it is one of the biggest roles. Because imagine if someone is sick, maybe someone has been infected by an infectious disease, and the woman is there. Of course, she's not a designated nurse. She's not trained. She doesn't have gloves. She doesn't know the precautionary mechanisms she needs to take. For her, she's just thinking that I'm the mother. This is my child. I'll have to take care of her. Whether I get infected or not, I don't care. This is my husband. I'll do this. This is my father. This is my brother. So that alone exposes them to the disease. That alone exposes them to the mental health that my colleague is talking about. So looking at it, that's why we always bring the intersectionality aspect of it. Like when we want to attain climate justice, we cannot look at it from a linear perspective. Nothing is linear. Nothing is black and white. They are colors. So we need to look at it from the overall perspective. When we're looking at this woman, what lens are you using? Because there's so many lenses.
True.
There's so many lenses. So that's why we say whenever we push the gender, agenda, it's not like we're doing it for the sake of doing it. It's actually there is hard proof to back, the statements. There's statistics that shows that women are the most vulnerable. Women are being affected in one way or another through different lenses. So if you're affected as a mother, you could be affected as a daughter. If you're not affected as a daughter, you could be affected as a child. All those circumstances expose you to being to the harsh effects of climate change. And if we are to get you to the other end of the line, which is climate justice, then we need to find something that works for you. Customize that intervention mechanism that will actually be of help to you and not just bring you the help we think you deserve. We should actually, like she said, do our research. What is affecting you? How are you being affected? What will be the best way to help this woman? The moment we realize that, the moment we incorporate gender in all the policies and all the strategies, is the moment we'll be able to give them the help they need. Is the moment we'll be able to ferry them to the other side that we call climate justice.
Okay. Cindy, parting shot. That's your camera. What do you have to say about climate justice, gender justice, intersectionality, especially in terms of the woman? As we wrap up.
As I wrap up, as a woman, as an indigenous woman, first of all, I am triple marginalized because I'm a young person, I'm a woman, and I'm an indigenous woman.
And a mother.
Yes, which is even times 4. So my parting shot is that we need to include these women, like the climate processes that are out there. They need to be inclusive, they need to be open, and they need to ensure that they are speaking to the local woman. Because as we are here today, we are not speaking for ourselves. We are speaking for the woman in Narok, for the woman in Nakuru, or the woman in Lamu. So all these policies, they need to be gender inclusive, because from policies it now leads to action. Because for there to be any for any government or for any project to be there, they when you're implementing a project, they always ask you, do you have a gender policy? Do you have an environmental safeguards policy? So we need to ensure that we have these policies, because these policies will now lead to action. They will drive the action, and they need to be gender inclusive. So, and especially as world leaders are gathering in Dubai for COP28, they need to remember that. Yeah.
All right. Suheila, your parting shot. Briefly, please.
So hard to be brief, but I would like to speak on the COP28 before I give my parting shot. I think another problem with the COPs, we've been having them for 28 years. I feel like we're going back to the false solutions. We're going back to people sitting on round tables to make decisions of things they have no idea about. People proposing solutions for problems they do not understand. And I think that's one of the problems with the COPs. So when we go back to what we've been saying, The moment these things are done the right way, it will be really easy for us to attain that climate justice. And my parting shot is this: there's no climate justice without gender justice. Yes, I think I'll leave it at that.
There's no climate justice without gender justice.
Yes.
And thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you very much, Suheila. I keep on forgetting your name, Suheila, for the insightful conversation. And thank you very much for you, dear listener, who has been following this conversation. And we hope you have learned a thing or two in terms of gender justice and climate justice. And I hope we have also defined all those jargons that Cindy was talking about: intersectionality, inclusivity, inclusion. And we hope to have another episode about this, because I feel we still have a lot that we still need to talk about. And so, no. Just from where I have heard.
You can just add.
Just continue.
So keep the conversation going by commenting on the comment section, and we'll see you next time. I have been your host, Wanjiru Kinyua.